Hi, what's up, everybody? My name is Gally. I run a YouTube channel called Hyperchange. Today I'm going to present why I'm invested in Tesla and why I think the company over the next decade is going to reinvent our energy and transportation systems and could potentially be worth $1 trillion, making it one of the most valuable companies in the world. So it's going to be a little bit more business, investment focused. I hope that's okay. I do have a disclaimer, not a financial advisor. Just want to put this up. I'm a totally biased Tesla shareholder, so I hope you guys all see that. Okay, let's get started. I have a ton of slides, so I just want to run through them. So Tesla's business, they invented the modern electric vehicle. The first car they produced was the Tesla Roadster, came out in 2008, cost about $200,000. This was the first iteration of their technology. And why I'm pointing this out, many of you probably know this, but Tesla, it looks like a Lotus Elise, and that's because it is the body of a Lotus Elise. So they took this body, put all these electronics in it, tried to adapt it, make it electric. They used a ton of third-party suppliers, and this was sort of the first generation of their modern electric vehicle technology. Then, in 2012, they brought the cost down significantly and released the Model S. But what I think is even more important about that is they actually took way more of the production in-house. They took over a factory in Fremont, California, previously owned by Toyota and GM, and totally built and designed this vehicle from scratch. This is one of the first times we've seen a car company be started in the US, let alone Silicon Valley. They built the entire thing from the ground up. So the trend here is continued vertical integration. They're pushing more and more to do everything in-house. This is very rare in the auto industry. Then in 2018, they brought out the Model 3, which costs about $40,000 on the cheapest end. This is the third iteration of their technology platform, and yet again, the trend is more vertical integration. Now they're not only just building the body of the car themselves, but they're also building the battery pack out of the Gigafactory in Nevada. So this is sort of the culmination of the latest technology that Tesla's released in the market today. And I just think the big takeaway from these three slides is Tesla's bringing down the cost of this technology, always about 300 miles of range, to make it more accessible. And this has always been Elon Musk's master plan, to use these higher priced cars to subsidize something that could eventually become for the mass market. And I think they're on to their fourth generation technology, which we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. So Tesla's not just selling cars. I believe they're selling computers on wheels. Much like what Apple did to the smartphone or to cell phones and turned them into a computer, and that unlocked a ton of value and a ton of different applications that we could have never imagined for what phones can do. I think Tesla's going to do the same thing. They are turning the car into the computer. And if you're following, the CEO of Volkswagen just came out and said the car is poised to be the most important connected device in our economy behind the cell phone. And that revolution is coming up. And I think that's something that Tesla's leading. So I look at them just as much as a computer company as a car company. And I think this is what the era that Tesla is ushering in, the era of the smart car. If any of you took an Uber or Lyft to get here today, you probably noticed there was like 4 different screens. There was like a little infotainment system. Then he had set up a little phone. Then there was maybe like an iPad. Like there's like 4 different screens. None of them are talking to each other. I just think it's so clear where the future is headed. It's no buttons. It's one big touch screen that controls the entire vehicle. And I think this is what every single car is poised to look like. I think 2020 is really the era of the smart car. So this is Tesla's quarterly vehicle deliveries of computers on wheels, extremely successful company. I know everyone talks about how Tesla used to be failing. I think that's kind of ironic, given the fact they've hit record sales every single year, compounding their vehicle deliveries at an enormous rate. As you can see, 2019, they just set a record of 367,000 cars delivered. They just projected to do 500,000 in 2020, so this chart's going to keep going up and to the right, but I think this is only just getting started. Everyone can hear me okay? I just want to make sure. Okay. So now we're going to talk about market share. Tesla has dominated the electric vehicle market. Originally, when I was following Tesla, 2012, 2013, the theory was every other big auto company is going to crush Tesla. Tesla has no experience building cars. Every other car company is going to come out with a competing electric vehicle that will outsell them with better technology. Well, what has happened since then? Nobody has been able to compete. These are 2019 US electric vehicle sales. The Model 3 is sold 159,000 cars, and I'm using North America. I wish I had global data, but the US is Tesla's home market. So I think it's really important to look at just the US. This is where they're focused. I'm gonna kind of extrapolate that that's what the market share will do in other regions once they launch there. And so And you also notice the number 2 and 4 best-selling cars are also Teslas. And so despite the fact that every other auto company with decades more of experience that everyone thought was going to come in and crush Tesla, they have not been able to do it. What I think is even more interesting is this is actually not a fair chart because the Teslas are selling for $80,000, $40,000, $50,000. All these other cars are selling for $30,000. So when you factor that in on a revenue-adjusted basis, the difference becomes even larger. Now, this is a chart of the US market share. They have 80% of the market share. Everyone else, with 3 models, everyone else combined, I think it's like 7 or 8 different auto companies, 15 models, 21% of the market. And once again, this is not adjusted for revenue. If this was adjusted for revenue, Tesla would have about 90% of the electric vehicle market. And so I think we can all agree that electric vehicles are the future. This is where the world's headed, and I think a sneak preview of who's going to dominate that is if you look at the market share of electric vehicles today, and it's very clear, I think, who's ahead. So now let's talk about why. What is the technology that Tesla's developed? So lots of tiny batteries. Up until now, every single electric vehicle previously had been done with lead-acid batteries. And so Tesla saw the evolution of the smartphone or the cell phone, the laptop, and saw the commercialization of cheap, far more powered lithium-ion cells. This is a picture of J.B. Straubel, the original co-founder and CTO of Tesla, and he came up with this idea, why don't we string a ton of these little batteries together and we can actually power a car? Everyone thought this was totally insane, a totally new way to do electric vehicles, but that's exactly what they did. And this is a picture of J.B. Straubel. You can see him gluing together each little battery cell to make that. So what this results in, and in that big silver box there is where all those thousands of batteries are, is the electric skateboard, which also has the powertrain and drivetrain, which is that sort of orange thing right there. And this is the bread and butter of Tesla's technology. This is what every single automaker is pouring billions of dollars in R&D to recreate. This is the mystery of Rivian. Do they have a skateboard that can compete with Tesla? Is that why Amazon and Ford are investing so much money in them? But this is the holy grail of electric vehicle technology, and this is what's been developed. So now let's dive into some numbers about why Tesla's skateboard is the best. So Tesla released in 2012 the Model S, which had 270 miles of range. There is not a production EV on the market today that's not a Tesla that has that much range. I think that tells you all you need to know. But this is a little bit more complex chart by my friend Matt Joyce, which shows the core efficiency rating, kilowatt hours of the battery pack divided by range, divided by weight, essentially taking all of that skateboard technology and seeing how efficient it is. Why is this extremely important? Because it shows that with less batteries, your Tesla will take you further. This means it's cheaper to build. This is a huge economic advantage. Not only does it mean your car gets more range, but it means Tesla can build the battery for cheaper, they can sell the car for cheaper, and this is why they're the only company that can actually make a profit selling electric vehicles today. So now let's talk about why they're able to achieve this. This is the Gigafactory in Nevada. Everyone thought Tesla was crazy to actually build this, but they started from scratch. This is a picture of what it's going to be when it's looked like when it's done. Totally renewably powered. Some windmills over there, solar panels on the roof, but this is where they're actually building battery packs. And when they set out to do the Model 3 and the Model Y, they were like, we're going to need more batteries than the entire world is producing. So how are we going to build these cars if the batteries don't exist? We're going to have to build a factory from scratch in the desert to do it. That's exactly what they did against all odds. And now this is the asset that everyone is desperate to try and replicate, which is so ironic. But this is a huge piece of their advantage and the reason why they've been able to get the cost down, economies of scale. The fact that they're pumping out battery packs for hundreds of thousands of cars per year is the reason why they can get the price point to actually sell you a Model 3 for 40 grand and make a profit on it. Switch to this side just to mix it up. All right, so now we're going to get into the autonomy piece, because I think there's 2 pieces of the vehicle revolution that we need to focus on that are happening at once, and this is the only reason, according to Elon Musk, why a new car company could be successful. There hasn't been a new successful car company in the US for decades and decades, and there hasn't been any tech disruption, but now there is. The first one is batteries, like we just talked about, that electric skateboard, not the engine. And the second is autonomy. Cars are becoming computers on wheels, and they're going to drive themselves. I know that gets a lot of hype, but I think this is actually coming. So this is a picture of Tesla's fully self-driving computer. They launched this team in 2016. They hired a chip engineer by the name of Pete Bannon, who they poached from Apple, who developed Apple's chip technology that is some of the best in the world. He developed this team from scratch. Now Tesla is the only car company in the world with their own computer. So that's my question to Rivian, Uber, Apple, all of these companies that are trying to develop self-driving technology. You don't even have the chip yet, so how are you even getting started? So this is a chip that's optimized to take in data from 8 cameras, the 2 radars, and process it at using ultra-low power. It's perfectly engineered for an autonomous vehicle. And so every other car company is using chips from companies like NVIDIA, which were actually designed for GPUs, video game graphic unit processing. They weren't even supposed to be designed for electric cars. They've been repurposed. Tesla's designed that chip from scratch to make it be self-driving. This is, maybe I'm getting a little too deep, but this is just to show you the levels of the technology that Tesla has. And then not only that, but they don't have the chip. They have 8 cameras and a couple of radars, and this shows you kind of what the car sees. And I think a good way to think about this is, will the Tesla be able to drive itself? It has 8 cameras all around the car, looking at everything at once, taking in data. I think that's a lot better. Your Uber driver, Lyft driver, you probably drove here today with 2 cameras, your eyes, which half the time were probably distracted looking at your phone. So I think this 8-camera approach from a first principle standpoint is clearly going to be enough to get the car there. And they also have radar too. But anyway, now let's talk about Tesla's cars and the data advantage. Tesla has about 1 million cars on the road as of today, maybe a little more, about 750,000 of them with the Autopilot 2 hardware. These cars are driving around collecting data. Just like when you type a search into Google, you're training its neural network. When you drive your Tesla, turn the wheel, step on the brake, disengage Autopilot, you are training its neural network to get better. This is a key advantage that no other company has. This has resulted in billions of miles of data being collected. Tesla just reported they've had over 3 billion autopilot miles. This is a slide from Lex Friedman of MIT. He thinks they're going to collect another 2 billion this year. Waymo is the #2 company in terms of real-world driving data. They're going to do 10 million miles this year. 2 billion versus 10 million. That is the difference we're talking between #1 and 2 and data. So I think data is the new oil, information is the new oil, maybe a bad analogy for this conference. But I think if you believe that, then it's very, very clear. And if you own a Tesla, you've been able to see just how rapid the company's technology has been improving because of this data. And if you think about it, more and more cars on the road, more and more miles driven, I think that's going to be what perfects their self-driving technology. This is what Waymo's doing. According to my research, it costs them about 200 grand. As you can see, the sensors. They have to put this huge sensor on top of the car. They're using an NVIDIA chip. They're using a Chrysler hybrid. That's not even an electric car. So they're trying to tie together 4 to 5 different companies worth of technology into one product. Tesla, and it's the same thing for Uber. If you look at any of these self-driving cars, they're like all these crazy sensors around them, and they're paying an engineer, maybe 2 engineers who are making 100-something grand a year to sit in those cars and drive them around. I mean, it's a huge money-losing endeavor. Guess what Tesla's doing? Selling you a Model 3 that cost them 40 grand to make and actually getting paid to collect that data. This is a total reversal. This economic law is a reason why I think no other company can even be taken seriously in the race to build an autonomous car yet, until they get this flywheel going. So now let's talk about the other advantage, Silicon Valley talent. Tesla is as much a tech company as a car company. No other car company is located in Silicon Valley other than some of these startups, and I think that's a huge advantage. If these are computers on wheels, you need the best software engineers in the world. They live in Silicon Valley. Now let's talk about the financials. Tesla has gone from 200 million in revenue in 2011 to 25 billion this year, one of the fastest growing companies in the history of ever. 82% compounded annual growth rate. And you might be like, oh, that's starting from zero, Gally. That's starting from 200 million. Who here has built a business that does 204 million in sales? Nobody. I think it's pretty big. So 82% CAGR. Let's compare that to the FANG, the most popular technology growth stocks over the past 8 years. Tesla's outgrown every single one of them by a huge amount. This is compounded annual growth rate, so this adds up. Let's look at other auto companies. VW, Toyota, Ford, GM. Other auto companies are similar. It's not even close. So when you compare the valuation of Tesla, they're like, oh, why is it so high? Why is it worth so much? The market is forward thinking. If you look at the growth rate, I think that tells you everything you need to know. This is the operating income. Tesla loses money, but they're a startup. That's about to change. So as you can see, their losses have been shrinking, but they're in investment mode. They're growing like crazy. But I do think it is worth pointing out that they haven't actually made money in a year yet. But if we move to a quarterly point of view, what do we see here? In the past 4 quarters, or in the past 6 quarters, 4 of them have been profitable. Tesla's turned a corner. They reach enough scale with their business model and the Model 3 to where they can actually start to consistently turn a profit. And I think this is only going to continue going forward. And this is why the stock has been soaring, and sort of there's been a huge movement around Tesla, and people have had to take them seriously, because now not only is the product been proven, not only do people love the car, but the business model has been proven as well. And that's why 2019 was such a big year for the company. Elon Musk, owner, operator, founder. This is the biggest thing I look for when I invest in a company. He's the longest tenured CEO of any US auto company, takes a $0 salary. Does any other auto company CEO do that? No, because they're just getting rich on their salary. They do not care about the stock price. They are not incentivized to make your investment go up. I think Elon Musk is one of the smartest people on the planet. Guess where the most of his net worth is? Tesla stock. That's why he just put in a massive stock package when the company was at $59 billion, projecting the company to go up to $650 billion in revenue or market cap. For him to fully get paid $175 billion in revenue. I mean, no other CEO has ever done this in the history, like anything I've ever seen. And he's basically saying, I only want to get paid if I take this all the way. And so I just think that cannot be understated. I can zoom in on that. Now let's talk about what's next for Tesla. I hope I still have some time. I'm trying to get to questions too. What is next for this company? 90 million cars sold in the world every single year. 2% of those are electric vehicles. A bunch of them are Teslas. They're dominating that market share. But this is what we have to tackle. 98% of the world is still buying new cars that are burning fossil fuels. I think this is ridiculous, but this is what's all about to change. So this is the opportunity. These are Tesla's annual vehicle deliveries today. And this is what they have announced that's coming in the future that's poised to grow these. The Model Y, a crossover utility vehicle that's the biggest segment of the auto market. Tesla semi-truck, they're not going to be moving around just people. They want to move around stuff too. This is the inside of the semi-truck. I just thought this was really cool, so I wanted to put that in there. This is the Cybertruck. I'm sure we all know about that. Yeah. People love the Cybertruck. And this is what I think Tesla's vehicle deliveries will be until 2025, based on those new cars they announced. So I did this, and I was working on that slide, and I was like, actually, though, I don't think Tesla's best-selling vehicle is one they've announced yet. I think Tesla's best-selling vehicle is their next generation of technology. This is something that Elon Musk has hinted about. The whole point is to get the world off fossil fuels, build a cheaper car. So recently they talked about the Gigafactory 3 in Shanghai, and they said we want to have a competition to design a car in China from scratch. They released this picture. Is this the Model 2? Is this the $25,000, $20,000 car that Elon Musk has been hinting about that could really drive mainstream adoption of electric vehicles, outsell all of their vehicles? I think yes. And I think this is what has been this is what Tesla's research and the company has been culminating in, is this technology. So when I factored that into my estimates for the next decade, I realized that I think Tesla's best-selling car at the end of the decade is one that doesn't exist yet, that they haven't announced, and that's the Model 2. And this is what I think they can do over the next 10 years till 2030, sell about 6 million vehicles a year in the year 2030. And if you remember my slide, there's 90 million cars sold a year. So we're still talking about Tesla getting 7 to 8% market share globally. If you think this is going to be the Apple of the auto world, Apple has about 10% of the smartphone market. I think this is a similar sort of playbook for Tesla to follow, and that would be 6 million cars a year. That translates into revenue of $246 billion by the year 2030. That's over a 10x over the next 11 years. I haven't even talked about energy. Tesla's more than a car company. Really briefly, they sell big batteries. They're leveraging that battery expertise to build batteries that stabilize the grid. This is just as big of an opportunity as cars, because the whole grid's got to go electric too. And batteries and solar are a huge piece of that. This is Tesla's quarterly battery deployments, over 0.5 gigawatt hour in Q4 2019. They said this is going to grow 50% next year. So I think this is the dark horse piece of Tesla's business that nobody's been noticing, that's quietly been growing pretty quickly. That Q1 2018 spike is that huge battery in Australia. Now let's talk about the solar glass roof. Everyone made fun of Tesla when they bought Solar City. They were doing R&D on this next generation energy creation product. These are their solar deployments since they bought Solar City, but look right there. They've started going back up because they reintroduced leasing, they reintroduced the solar roof. They've also guided that this will grow 50% in 2020. And so this is their energy revenue until 2019. As you can see, it's kind of flat because we had the solar going down, batteries going up, but now we're going to have both growing. Elon said he thinks this could be a bigger opportunity than cars in the future, bigger business than cars in the future. So I compounded the revenue at 45%, slower than 50%. Maybe that's crazy, but this is what it gets me till 2030. Add that into the car revenue. I'm looking at $337 billion by 2030. If you put a 10% operating margin on that, every dollar in revenue, 10 cents goes to profit. That's $33.7 billion in profit times 30x. You get to $1 trillion, or a 3 times price sales ratio. These are all estimates. I'm probably going to be totally wrong, but this is like my back of the napkin math. And I want to follow how closely Tesla tracks to this, but this is why I think they could be $1 trillion company in the next decade or by the end of the decade. Why does this matter? Because if this all happens, this will be a dramatic shift for the world. This means we're going off fossil fuels. This means we actually have a shot at the climate crisis. So I think Tesla is much more about making money. It's actually about investing in a future you believe in. And yeah, so this is their mission. And I think that's what's super important. So I'll end it there.
I was wondering what your estimate is for how many semis they can sell within, say, 5 years if they can get the battery capacity they need. That's a 200,000 vehicle a year market. how many cars can they sell, trucks can they sell, and how much can they gross selling the semi within 5 years?
Yeah, so like you said, the question is about how many semi-trucks. 200,000 are sold in the US each year. I mean, none of them are electric. I think all of them are going to go electric, and I think Tesla has the best battery technology. It's all about how fast they can scale, how quickly they can ramp that battery technology. That will be the bottleneck. Tesla's biggest problem isn't not having people to buy their cars, it's that they can't build them fast enough. So if you're thinking about companies strategically from a business perspective, that's probably the best problem you can have that's limiting your growth. And I think they're about to announce the Battery Investor Day. They bought a company called Maxwell Technologies. So all this battery technology, Tesla's about to unveil a next generation battery, which is probably in the semi-truck, or a way to build batteries. And I think that's going to solve the bottleneck of how many semis they can build and when. So I think that'll give us a lot more clarity on that.
All right. So I very much agree with you that data is kind of the new oil. And with that in mind, I guess the question, as a current Tesla owner, and there are lots of others out here, we love to give free stuff, we love to volunteer for things, but have you ever seen data laying out what the value is of that data that we are giving to Tesla? I mean, the many hours that I've driven all around that they've benefited from. Have you seen that?
I think you're seeing the value because your car is getting better at driving itself. And so that's the way I think about you getting that value back. And did I answer your question? No. I mean, I think that's all the value is the user data is like a huge piece of it. And so what Tesla does, I think, is when you disengage autopilot, they're going to go back and look at that footage and figure out why and try and improve it every single time. So if you think about when you're driving on autopilot and you disengage, that's when you're helping the company most, I'd say. And they have this whole system of labeling. And I think I'm sort of out of my depth here, but Elon Musk was just talking about a huge rewrite of the underlying code of autopilot to make the labeling more efficient. So they're labeling more objects more rapidly. I don't know. I hope that answers it.
Hi, Gally. Thank you so much. I sold a bunch of stuff off last week and bought 2 more shares of Tesla and made like $500 in an hour thanks to you. So I just want to say thank you so much for all this stuff you're doing. I wanted to ask you 2 quick questions. One, do you think there's going to be a disconnect on Battery Day like there was on Autonomy Day with the street? Because there was a huge disconnect, I feel, with Wall Street. When Autonomy Day happened, I feel like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, and then the stock did nothing. Do you think that's going to happen on Battery Day, or do you think people are going to understand?
I hope people understand, and I think they've learned their lesson of not taking Elon Musk seriously. And after Autonomy Investor Day is interesting because they laid out the case for vision-based autonomy, which was very controversial because everyone else was using LiDAR. And then in the months following that, you saw every single key opinion leader turn and say LiDAR was wrong, Elon was probably right, including the guy who started Waymo. So I don't know what the market's, I don't know. To be honest, I don't think Wall Street's going to get it, and I don't think they have gotten much of it the entire time, but I think that's not really mattering anymore. Except Art, yeah.
Hey, as an investor, I'm glad they didn't take the company private at 420. Question really is, when you're growing at 80% CAGR, what kind of execution risk does that pose, and how do you feel they'll manage that?
I mean, whenever you grow fast, I think Tesla makes hiccups, and I think that's why they're easy to criticize, is because they're a huge company trying to do a million things at once on a budget, growing like crazy. And I mean, yeah, that means you can mess things up sometimes, but I think that's also why Tesla's so successful, is because they move that quickly and they're willing to break things and they're willing to fail. And everyone was talking about how that Model 3 ramp in 2017, 2018 was such a disaster. That resulted in them perfecting the Gigafactory model, which has been so successful that they're immediately replicating it in China, then Berlin, then we'll see where else. So I think Tesla's willingness to fail and willingness to move fast has been their key biggest advantage. Yes. Bag.
How are you doing?
Great.
So I have been following you as well for a long time, made some money off Tesla stock. My question mainly is, I don't feel that Tesla really, like, politically or maybe like has been pushed forward or been like accelerated by any type of governmental funding and help, with renewable energy. Do you think that if we see a change in politics, if we see a different direction of the next presidential election, do you think that will or will not really have an effect on Tesla being able to ramp up even faster?
I think if a Democrat gets elected, the likelihood of legislation passed that promotes electric vehicles is very strong. But they haven't needed, there was a tax credit in the US, but now that's expiring. So I think it's super important for Tesla to be successful without the tax credit. But I also think this is an American success story that nobody talks about. I think this should be on the news every single day of an American car company started from scratch, changing the world. Why, nobody's talking about that. So yeah, one of my big things on that is I've seen the climate protests and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just how do you guys not get that Tesla is doing more to fix this than anyone else? And nobody's seen, I think that's coming though. And people are going to connect those dots.
Hey, Gally. So yesterday, ARK Invest updated their bull case to 15,000 per share in the next 5 years. What does $1 trillion company do to Tesla's stock price? I'm sure a lot of people want to.
I think this is $1 trillion if you assume 200 million shares outstanding is 5,000 a share, I think. But that's just an estimate. But to point out, Art, the one thing I didn't talk about here is if Tesla goes autonomous, or if they'd achieve full self-driving, this is a huge fundamental change in society that I don't think people are appreciating how big of disruptive potential this has. You could get an Uber for 1/5 the cost that's not polluting fossil fuels. This is going to totally change the way society works, and I think that's why ARK is so, they're saying, look, all that data I showed you, and I said how nobody's even close to Tesla, who knows when it'll happen, but it's looking clearer and clearer that when it does, it will be Tesla first. That's going to be such a huge business opportunity and go from you making $5,000 to $10,000 on that Model 3 you built for the potential for it to make $100,000, $200,000. That flips the gross margin of the auto industry from 20% to 80%, a software company. And then Ben Solons was saying on the other panel, what if you had Intel inside or Qualcomm inside, but Tesla inside, and they're the battery and the self-driving software that every other car company uses? That's probably worth 50 grand a car times, I don't know how many cars we need, but I think that's how you start to get to that ARK price target.